Hello guys, my name is Nash. Welcome to Thursday Tales of Terror. TTT. For today's case, we'll be talking about the Adrian Lim case. The case was also famously known as the Toa Payoh Ritual Murders. Just like the name suggested, Adrian Lim was one very cunning and despicable man. He would con women into offering him sex and money in return for treatments, beauty, and good fortune. He made his victims believe that he had superpowers, but what's surprising was, throughout this whole incident, he ended up killing two innocent children as a revenge against the police. You would think that he would end up killing one of his many female victims, but instead he shifted his targets towards children. What was Adrian really thinking? Adrian Lim was born on the 6th of January 1942. He was the eldest of 3 children and his sisters would describe him as a hot-tempered boy. He attended Anglo-Chinese school only to drop out after secondary 1. He started work as an internal security department informer but lasted only for a few months. After that, he worked for a radio broadcasting company named Rediffusion for 14 years. In the first 3 years, he would install and service the equipment in the company as an electrician, in which after he got promoted to become a bill collector. In April 1967, at the age of 25, Adrian married his childhood sweetheart with whom he had 2 children. He converted to becoming a Catholic for his marriage. Adrian and his family lived in rented rooms until he purchased a 3-room flat in 1970 at Block 12, Toa Payoh, 7th floor. In 1973, Adrian started part-time practice as a spirit medium before becoming full-time. Adrian said that he learned of these spells from a bomo named Uncle Willie. If you guys don't know what a bomo is used to often describe someone who is able to heal various diseases by using spiritual or supernatural powers. But of course, Uncle Willie is a con himself. Despite being a Catholic, Adrian would pray to gods of various religions. The Hindu goddess Kali and Pragan, which Adrian described as a Siamese sex god, were among the spiritual entities he called on in his rituals. Most of his victims were mostly women, most of whom were bar girls, dance hostesses, and prostitutes. He also targeted superstitious men and elderly females whom he cheated only of cash. He particularly also liked to prey on gullible girls who have deep personal problems. He also liked to prey on young and uneducated girls. He promised them that he could solve their problems and increase their beauty through a ritual massage. Adrian has different treatments and ways. It's not just limited to a ritual massage. He would go into a trance and speak in different languages and persuaded women to sleep with him in order to cleanse the evil in them. After Adrian and his client had stripped, he would massage their body including their genitals and have sex with them. He made them take empty oaths and vows in the presence of idols and deities. He even admitted that all those who had sex with him were actually raped by him, as he will frighten them with all sorts of tricks. Adrian's doctor even said that Adrian had went to his clinic at least 40 times for hormone injections to increase his sexual potency. At times, he would use fortune reading to try and convince his clients to sleep with him. He doesn't actually know how to read, of course. It's just one of his scams. He personally believed that sleeping with young women can keep his youth and vigor. One of Adrian's treatment also included an electroshock therapy, in which he tried to follow a similar concept, with hospitals using it on mental patients. He would place his clients' feet in a tub of water and attach wires to their temples and pass electricity to them. He would assure his clients that the shock would cure their headaches and drive away evil spirits. When his clients were doubtful, Adrian still had one trick up his sleeve. According to Adrian, this trick was the most effective in deceiving them. It was known as the needle in egg trick. He first heated the needle until it turned black. When the needle was hot, it would easily penetrate the egg as the heat softened the shell. Powder will then be used to cover the hole where the needle went in. So once all the eggs were tampered with, he would take one egg and rub around them and on them, and then he would ask them to crack the egg. And inside, when they crack the egg, they will see the black needle. And of course, he will go like, "Oh, there's a black needle. It's not good. You are being harassed by an evil spirit." And they were all convinced by that. So that's one of his tricks. Now, one of his regular clients by the name of Catherine Tan Wei Chu actually became his mistress after believing that she was chosen to be his holy wife. Growing up, Catherine felt that she was neglected by her parents, as they would often favor her brothers more, and she longed for their attention. At the age of 13, however, Catherine was sent to Marymount Vocational Center, a home for juvenile delinquents, by her parents, and all the more she felt unwanted by them. Things became worse for her when her grandmother grandmother, whom she was very close with, passed away, and not long at the age of 17, she left home to become a bar girl. She was just 20 when she went to see Adrian in 1974 for treatment on the advice of her nightclub friends. They told her that Adrian was a spirit medium that could cure all ailments and depression. Catherine's visits to Adrian became regular and the relationship grew intimate. Initially, they had a misunderstanding, and for a period of time, Catherine stopped visiting him, but Adrian would go look for her. One day, Adrian told Catherine that he was suffering from a weak heart, and he said that Catherine's virginity would save his life. But before she gave in, Adrian had also reportedly asked to have bodily contact with her sister, who was only 15 years old then. In 1975, Adrian insisted for Catherine to live together with him. Initially, she refused, but Adrian went into a trance to scare her. He was so violent, beating his chest and shaking his head, asking why I was so stubborn and whether I wanted to kill him. And eventually, she decided to move into his flat as she got scared. Now, to allay his wife's suspicions that he was having an affair with Catherine, Adrian swore an oath that Catherine was nothing more but just a client of his before a picture of Jesus Christ. But his wife was obviously not stupid, and this was not a situation that she could accept. 9 days later, she took their kids and moved out of the apartment. She eventually divorced Adrian in 1976. At this point, Adrian was already a full-time spirit medium. Lots of people came to him for treatments, and his business kept growing, and he was earning big bucks. It was even said that at one point, Adrian was receiving 6,000 to 7,000 Singapore dollars a month from a single client. After Adrian and his wife divorced, in front of an altar of Chinese and Indian deities, Catherine was made his holy wife, and in June 1977, they got officially married. The marriage wasn't all sweet and loving. Adrian was abusive towards Catherine. He would beat her and threaten her, and he somehow managed to persuade Catherine to prostitute herself and work as a striptease performer to supplement income. He also told her he needed the money to go to Europe for his heart surgery. He also convinced her that he needed to have sex with young women in order to stay healthy, and so Catherine would assist him in his business by convincing other women to sleep with him and to prostitute themselves as well. Adrian's influence over Catherine was so strong that with his encouragement and promise that sex with a younger man would preserve her youth, Catherine had intercourses with a Malay teenager and even her younger brother. Blood drinking was also compulsory. What do I mean by that? According to Adrian, he managed to get a doctor to extract blood from him and Catherine. He explained that he needed to drink the blood because they were performing voodoo acts and also because he was worshipping a Hindu goddess. It was compulsory for the devotee to drink blood. So using a syringe, the doctor would extract blood from the both of them and emptied it into separate bottles. Adrian paid the doctor $10 for his services, and they also came to an agreement whereby the doctor will extract blood from anyone whom Adrian sent to his clinic. The doctor explained that he had no choice because they were persistent and they refused to leave the room. The doctor also gave them many pills which were usually for helping people to sleep. The doctors involved did receive disciplinary actions, if you're wondering. After getting the blood, Adrian would keep the bottles of blood in the refrigerator and took them out at midnight. He would dip his fingers in the bottle and smear it on the picture of goddess Kali. After this, he would light joss sticks and drink blood in front of the altar. Catherine would do the same. She didn't really have much of a choice. She was afraid. After this, Adrian got a Malay bomber to get blood donors and told Catherine to send the donors to the doctor, and similar rituals would be performed with their blood. Despite claiming that Catherine was meant to be his holy wife, he continued to take on other holy wives in the years followed. Catherine said that there was this girl by the name of Christina who came to live with them, and because of that, she became very depressed. A Malaysian ex-dance hostess was also being tricked into becoming one of Adrian's holy wives. She even gave Adrian $100,000. It was even said that Adrian had up to about 40 holy wives. But Catherine and one other will play a huge part in the killings of the two children. You might be wondering, how did Adrian manage to convince Catherine to do all this? He would actually threaten her by saying that he would give her a shock treatment. Adrian managed to invent an electric shock gadget, and he would often administer shocks to her. As much as Catherine wanted to leave this man, she was afraid. When she was asked, "Why didn't you leave this man or report the matter to the police?" she said, "Because he claimed that he had supernatural powers. He told me that I could not run away from him. Even if I died, he could find my soul. So that's his story with Catherine. In 1979, Ho Kah Hong was brought by her mother to see Adrian. She was 24 years old and already married. Like Catherine, Ho Kah Hong also didn't really have a great time growing up. When she was 8, her father passed away. She was sent to live with her grandmother until she was 15. When she returned to her mother and siblings, she was constantly required to give way to her elder sister Lai Ho. Obviously, Kah Hong was not happy, thinking that it was favoritism, and she started showing her temper easily. But there was a reason for this. It was not known what her sister Lai Ho was suffering from, but she was sent to Woodbridge Hospital, which is like a psychiatric hospital. Lai Ho was sent there for treatment, but she was not getting any better. So one of their friends suggested that they try Adrian, and she became convinced of Adrian's powers by his needle and egg trick. Adrian also suggested that Lai Ho should live in his flat for a month. Adrian would then use his electrical device on Lai Ho and had intercourse with her. About a month later, her mother came to the flat with Kah Hong. Her mother believed that Adrian could cure Kah Hong's bad temper. Kah Hong herself also told Adrian that she was not feeling well. Adrian, who was quite fond of Kah Hong because he liked her body, suggested that Kah Hong should stay with him for at least 3 months. His motive? He wanted to continuously have intercourse with her. Kah Hong returned to Adrian's flat the following week to receive treatment, and Adrian gave her the electric shock treatment. The following night, he even put up a performance for her. He somersaulted and rolled to the front of the altar to show her that he was a medium. He went into a trance and faked the voice of an old man and spoke in Malay. He convinced Kah Hong to marry him that same night. Adrian desired to make Kah Hong one of his holy wives, even though she was already married to a man named Benson. In order to do so, Adrian sought to isolate Kah Hong from her family and fed her with lies. He claimed that her family were bad people and that Benson was an unfaithful man who would force her into prostitution. She believed Adrian's words, and after going through a ride with him, she became his holy wife. At this point, she no longer trusted her family members or her husband, and she even became violent towards them. About 2 months later, when Kah Hong's mother came, Adrian said he was not prepared to let her go. The following month, Benson came to look for his wife and ended up staying to observe her treatment. He was also persuaded by them to try the electric shock treatment. Adrian told Benson that he was possessed by an evil spirit, which was why his wife was indifferent to him. On the 7th of January 1980, Adrian decided to kill Benson. He tied Kah Hong's legs to Benson and put their feet into a tub of water. He purposely gave Benson the full dose of the current to kill him by sitting on his shoulders and pressing the device to Benson's temples. Both Benson and Kah Hong collapsed. When this happened, Adrian immediately took some smelling salts and managed to revive Kah Hong. He tried to revive Benson to see if he was still alive, but his body was cold and he stopped breathing. When Kah Hong woke, Adrian told her that the evil spirit from her body had entered Benson's body, killing him. Kah Hong was convinced, but the truth was Adrian only wanted to get rid of Benson because his presence was depriving him of having intercourse with his wife. Adrian then told Kah Hong to lie to the police. He told her what to say. So Kah Hong told the police that she was asleep when she felt the bed vibrating and later found her husband holding an electric fan. Benson's parents were contacted and Adrian told Kah Hong to cry to make the story realistic. The coroner found this suspicious, but they couldn't come to any other conclusion, so they made no further investigation. Kah Hong was actually quite affected by her husband's death. She started hearing voices and hallucinating seeing her dead husband. A few months after her husband died, she was admitted to Woodbridge Hospital. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia and started appropriate treatments. She was recovering well and got discharged not long after. She continued her treatments with follow-up checks. Her attitude towards her family began to improve, although she continued to live with Adrian and Catherine. During this time, Catherine started attending slimming courses. The company sent her a beautician to show her how to use the products. Her name was Lucy Lau. It didn't take Adrian very long to start his nonsense. He told Lucy that the ghost was haunting her and that he could help her with his sex rituals. Lucy was not convinced, and so Adrian decided to spike her drink and take advantage of her. Lucy would later report this matter to the police. He was charged and he and Catherine had to go down to the police station every fortnight to extend bail, and the routine went on for about 2 months, and he was getting annoyed and frustrated, and it was so inconvenient. And so Adrian came up with a plan. He decided to kill young children. Firstly, he wanted to kill them because he wanted to offer them to the goddess Kali and then drink their blood. He said by doing this, he can get the assistance of Kali to get out from the rape charge and other troubles. He also thought that if he killed children at random and dumped their bodies, he could confuse the police and make them investigate the murder and thereby not look into his rape case thoroughly. Adrian then pretended to be possessed by the goddess Kali and convinced Catherine and Ka Hong that the goddess wanted some children to be offered to her. They were convinced. The first victim, Agnes Unhook, was a 9-year-old who went to the Holy Innocents Chinese Girls' School. She was the youngest of 9 siblings. She was last seen alive by her sister Pauline and her friend at the church in Toa Payoh at about 4 p.m. on January 24, 1981. Ka Hong spotted Agnes at a nearby church and informed Adrian that she had caught a fish, meaning a young girl. After she lured Agnes into the flat, she placed Agnes in a position where Adrian in another room could observe her. Adrian said Agnes was just right for sexual intercourse. The 3 of them gave her some pills to make her sleepy. After Agnes became groggy and fell asleep, she was brought into the room by Ka Hong where Adrian raped her. Agnes could not scream at all because Adrian had gagged her. At about midnight, the 3 electrocuted and drowned her in a tub of water. They even drew her blood, drinking and smearing it on a portrait of goddess Kali. On January 25, 1981, at about 2:20 a.m., a man discovered Agnes's body in a brown vinyl bag near a staircase at Block 11 Toa Payoh after returning from a midnight show. According to a forensic expert, it would have taken Agnes 10 minutes to die. The second victim, Adrian wanted a boy this time round. Gazali Marzuki, who studied in Henry Park Primary School, was 10. He was staying with his grandmother at Block 344 Clementi Avenue 5 on February 6 for the Chinese New Year holidays. While at a playground with 2 cousins, a woman approached them. She asked for help to collect some things from a friend's house. Gazali agreed to help and followed her into a taxi. This was the last time he was seen alive. Gazali suffered a similar fate when he was brought by Ka Hong to the flat on 6 February. Ka Hong had chosen him because he looked like her dead husband. Despite being given some pills to make him sleepy, he took a long time to fall asleep. Adrian decided to tie up the boy as a precaution. However, the boy awoke and struggled. In a state of panic, the trio delivered karate chops to Gazali's neck and stunned him. After drawing his blood, they proceeded to drown him. Gazali struggled, vomiting and losing control of his bowels as he died. Blood dripped from his nose and mouth, leading to a trail of blood from Adrian's flat to a nearby hatch just in front of Block 10, where his body was found. The trio did try to clean as much as they could of these stains before sunrise. In fact, in the early hours of February 7, Mr. Fong, a resident nearby who lived at Block 12 in Toa Payoh, saw Catherine stepping out of the lift, carrying a child over her shoulder, and Adrian was with her. He would later testify in court. The trail of blood that was left by Gazali led to the arrest of Adrian, Catherine, and Ka Hong. Police followed the trail of blood, which eventually led them to Adrian's flat, and police searched his home. The house was very eerie. It was lit with amber light, and right in front when you go in is the altar. They found a pair of slippers, shorts, and a handkerchief, all stained with blood belonging to Adrian. A blood-stained blouse belonging to Ka Hong was also found in a pail. Pills containing the drug found in Gazali were seized, along with a syringe believed to contain his blood. Strands of hair that seemed like Gazali's were found under a carpet and a sofa. But the most damning evidence was a single piece of paper. We found a slip of paper inside the telephone book with both their names, Agnes and Gazali's. We knew then that was the man. 3 of them were arrested and the next day charged with murder. It was later revealed that Agnes and Gazali weren't the only victims they had targeted. Before Agnes, Ka Hong brought in 3 girls separately on 3 occasions. The first of the 3, a 10-year-old Indian girl, was rejected by Adrian due to her race and that one of the gods he worshipped is Hindu. The second girl, a Chinese girl residing in Clementi, was also rejected because she was too skinny. The third and last girl was turned away because Adrian saw her using a phone to call a friend. She had also told Adrian that the friend she was calling had seen her walking away with Ka Hong. Now let's talk about the trial. The trial is pretty long. I'm not able to put everything into this video, but I'll take the important parts. So during the course of the trial, Adrian kept giving conflicting statements. At one point, he would admit that he had raped Lucy and Agnes, but afterwards he would deny ever doing so. But throughout the trial, he maintained that he was the sole perpetrator of the crimes and told the court that the women are not to be blamed for they were only under his control. The two women also told the court that they both had lived in constant fear of Adrian. They genuinely believed that he had superpowers, and because of this fear, they followed his every order and had no free will of their own, but they have never denied their participation. However, under the questioning of Deputy Public Prosecutor Glenn Knight, Catherine admitted that Adrian had been defrauding his customers and that she had knowingly helped him to do so. Glenn somehow managed to get Ka Hong to agree that she was conscious of her actions at the time of the murders too. In order for the three of them to get a lighter sentence, mental illness was used for all three. So the prosecution had their own psychiatrist and the defense team had their own psychiatrist. So it was the battle of the psychiatrists. Basically, the defense psychiatrist believed that Adrian was mentally ill at the time of the crimes. He said Adrian had mild manic depression due to his voracious sexual appetite and deluded belief in the goddess Kali. The doctor also proclaimed that only an unsound mind would dump the bodies close to his home when his plan was to distract the police, but the prosecution psychiatrist obviously disagreed. According to the prosecution psychiatrist, Adrian was purposeful in his pursuits, patient in his planning, and persuasive in his performance for personal power and pleasure. Adrian's use of religion for personal benefit indicated full self-control. Catherine's representative psychiatrist, on the other hand, testified that she was mentally impaired by reactive psychotic depression. Catherine was depressed before she met Adrian due to her family background, and her depression got worse after the constant physical abuse and threats from Adrian. Drug abuse led her to hallucinate and believe the medium's lies. The prosecution psychiatrist disagreed. He said that Catherine had admitted to being quite happy with the material lifestyle Adrian gave to her, enjoying fine clothes and beauty salon treatments. A sufferer from reactive psychotic depression would not have paid such attention to her appearance. Also, Catherine had earlier confessed to knowing Adrian was a fraud but still made the decision to help him. On Ka Hong's mental situation, representative psychiatrists from both sides agreed that she suffered from schizophrenia long before she met Adrian and that her stay in Woodbridge had helped her recovery. The defense side was convinced that Ka Hong suffered a relapse during the time of the child killings, but the prosecution side rebutted this by saying that none of the Woodbridge doctors saw any signs of relapse during the 6 months of her follow-up checks. Instead, she methodically abducted and helped kill a child on 2 occasions. On 25 May 1983, crowds massed outside the building waiting for the outcome of the trial. All 3 defendants were found guilty of murder and received death sentences. The 2 women did not react to their sentences. On the other hand, Adrian beamed and cried, "Thank you, my lords," as he was led out. Catherine and Ka Hong did appeal against their sentences but were rejected. They tried again by appealing to London's Privy Council and President Wee Kim Wee but were unsuccessful. While on death row, the 3 of them were being counselled by Catholic priests and nuns, and the 2 women were converted into becoming a Catholic. Adrian, on the other hand, didn't have a good time in prison. He was hated by his fellow prisoners and he was often abused and was treated as an outcast. On 25 November 1988, the trio were given their last meal, and at 6 a.m., the trio were executed by hanging and later pronounced dead. After the sentences were carried out, the 3 murderers were given a short Catholic funeral mass by Father Doro and cremated on the same day. During the 1990s, the local film industry made 2 movies based on the murder case, the first of which was medium rare. It wasn't very well received. The second film, 1997's God or Dog, also had a dismal box office performance. Both shows had difficulty in finding local actors for the lead role. Zhu Horen and Xie Shaoguang were approached but they rejected it. Just a fun fact. There is also an episode for it that was shown on local TV, and Adrian's case was also featured in a book. Also, in the aftermath of the case, Adrian's flat became vacant from the day he was arrested. For 6 years, there was no one living in it given the traditional Asian sphere of haunted places at the crime scenes that involve unnatural death or murder. It was only in 1987 when a Catholic family moved into the flat. Gazali's mother didn't have it easy after the passing of her son. When she was interviewed by the New Paper 28 years later after the execution of the killers, she said she remained heartbroken and could not get over the incident. When she first received the news, she was so full of grief that she had to be sedated, and often for the next 34 years until 2014, she suffered from frequent fainting spells. It's really sad for the victims, and I believe Adrian Lim was probably one of the most horrifying and despicable men in Singapore. So we have come to an end for today's case story. Again, I tried to cover all the important parts of the story, but if you want an even more detailed information on the case, you can find it easily online, so don't worry. Yeah, so I'll see you guys next Thursday with another video.